So inside our main.go file, the first thing we need to do is enter the line package main, and this tells the compiler that main.go file is the entry point of our application. The function main that we are going to create later will always be called whenever you are running the program. So our goal will be to create that main function and create a new router inside that we are going to register our API endpoints and route handlers on. So you can see the main function does not take any arguments and it does not return any values, but it always gets invoked when you run the program, and all the code that you write inside will be executed. So again, our goal is to create a router instance that we will register our API endpoints and handler functions on, and in order to do that we need to use the Gorilla Mux package. So here we are on the GitHub repository of Gorilla Mux, and if you go down you will find the entire source code as well as instructions on how to do the installations and an example on how to register your endpoints and handler functions. So here you are given the command for installing the package, but since we have already done it, we don't need to enter that on our terminal. But looking at the example, you have Mux and you are invoking a new router on Mux. That gives you a new router instance, and that instance is assigned to R. And on the instance, they are invoking handle func and passing into handle func the endpoints and the handler functions. So now coming back to our code editor, we create our router instance from Mux, and here we are using the shorthand variable declaration syntax, and we are declaring router as well as assigning a value to it. The value is basically the new instance returned from the new router method of the Mux package. And as soon as I save the file, the Gorilla Mux package is added as an import into my main.go file. That's because of an extension I have on my Visual Studio Code editor, but if the import is not added, then you have to do it manually. You have to import the package into your main file. In addition, another useful feature I have on this editor is when hovering over a method, I'm given a glimpse of the method signature, and there's also a go-to feature. If I press on command and click on the method, it takes me to the file where the method is defined. So here we are brought to the mux.go file, and you can see the definition of the new router function, and you can also notice the return type is a pointer to router. You can also see the fields of the returned router. These are named routes and keep context. Now you can look at the router struct in detail by pressing on command and clicking on router. Here you can see router is a struct and it has several fields. Named routes and keep context are two of those attributes. So this is basically for you to get some insight about how these functions and the structs and fields are defined. And these third-party packages are really not black boxes, so you can use the go-to feature to go into each function's definitions and see how it's defined. Okay, now let's go back to our main.go file. So here we have created our router from the new router method of the Mux package, and currently there's nothing on this, but router has a method called handle func, as you have seen on the Mux package documentation. Okay, handle func is a method that takes two parameters, an endpoint, an API endpoint, and a handler function. So we're going to use that handle func function or method to register our API endpoints and handler functions. So in the first case, our endpoint will be sign up, and the handler function will also be named sign up. Okay, and on the returned value of handle func, we can call a method called methods, and methods is supposed to take a string that represents an HTTP method. In this case, our sign up handler function should react to a post request because the user has to send their credentials such as email and password, which have to be stored on the database. And the second request will be login, and the client has to make a post request because the user credentials have to be sent to be matched with the ones that are stored in the database. And the last one will be a protected endpoint. Okay, so the whole purpose of this course is how to create restricted routes that can only be accessed with valid tokens. So the protected endpoint will be registered with a handler function called protected endpoint, but you can see protected endpoint is getting passed into another function called the name of the function is a token verify middleware, and this is a middleware function that sits between the request to the endpoint / protected and the protected endpoint handler. So the purpose of token verify middleware is to verify the token that gets sent from the client, and once the token is valid, the middleware function gives access to the protected endpoint handler function. And the request has to be a GET request. So into methods, we have to pass the string GET. And in the next section, we will implement the code that will start our server.